Good morning, Kansas City. Welcome to another ELA Tuesday. I'm Chris Odom. I'm your ELA coordinator for Kansas City Public Schools. We're going to continue our series on poetry today and continue to explore the work of Elizabeth Acevedo in this awesome narrative poetry collection called The Poet X. And she won a national award for this novel. And what's really fun is we've been using it to explore quite a few things. And hopefully you maybe have got excited about it enough to want to find a copy on your own. So it's out there and it's a great text. You can find resources related to this book online, and that's where I'm pulling some of this information also. So let's start with the quote from her. Today we're going to talk about theme. And this quote says, "I only know that learning to believe in the power of my own words has been the most freeing experience of my life. It has brought me the most light. And isn't that what a poem is? A lantern glowing in the dark." So that's a pretty cool way to start us off today. You might start thinking about what would the theme be of that statement? Okay, so again, this is Elizabeth Acevedo, and we've been featuring her work for about 4 of these sessions in a row now in this same text, and we're kind of exploring the story that's coming out as we go. We're going to use it today to talk about theme. Some of her background is definitely in poetry and performance, so you can hear that in the voice that's featured in this. If you really like poetry yourself, you might check out this contest that's available in Kansas City. See if your teacher knows about it. Ask them about poetryoutloud.org. It's a great contest. In fact, I think Acevedo participated as a judge in the past herself, so it's a really big national chance to get involved with poetry. Okay, so today we're going to talk about theme and get a definition going. We're going to hear about 5 poems out of this book, and then to those poems we're going to apply our definition of theme. This is a pretty basic image up here, and it might be a little bit harder to see exactly what's here, but let's go to the next screen and see if we can use it as a point of discussion. So the theme is the underlying meaning of a literary work. Often theme is more likely to be found in something literary, like a story or a poem, because the theme is something that the author develops over time. And there's often more than one theme in a longer book, like a novel. There might be one major theme in a smaller work, like a poem or a short story. So it's also a good concept to think about just the big idea. This has been helpful when I explain it to students to think about when you were reading this or you were watching this, what was really the big idea that they were trying to get across from the author or the movie maker's point of view. Let's look at this picture. What do you think the big idea that comes from all of these images might be? And so to do so, you're going to have to kind of interpret and think about the significance and kind of how they all talk to each other to come to one meaning. So what exactly do you think this is trying to talk about? I'm really puzzled by what looks like a USB device connected to a basketball. That's really cool. But again, it would make me have to think about it. I see things related to graphs. This is a cup of coffee, I think. I don't know really here. Some kind of a animal that doesn't seem to be alive, right? Maybe a cow and some horns. And then definitely this stands out, right? So what would you decide the theme might be that goes with all of this detail together? To me, it seems like making a living or figuring out what it takes, I guess, to do what you do and all the components that might equal maybe like a life in business, right? Maybe so. So all that speaks to one big topic if we try to figure it out. Okay, another possible term you've heard related to theme is the moral. And stories that are intended to have a lesson often do so like a fable, but sometimes that might not have been the goal of the author. And so instead we would talk about the theme and what prevailed and what came across the most. We don't know necessarily that the author was trying to introduce us to a moral or teach us a lesson. Okay, so in that same way, it's a good word to remember because it helps you think about often a story has a moral or something big we take away. So it's possible that that might be related to the theme. Okay, we're getting done with some definitions. So we're really going to go ahead and decide what the theme is based on a few of the poems that I have pre-selected in The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. Let me page in here and find my first pages that are green. You'll notice I'm starting to keep colors because we've used the poems in the past to teach other things like setting. And then this week, I've got my green tabs to tell me that these are for theme. Okay. It's like the first green tab. The poem is called The Routine. So before we really get into this poem called The Routine, let's just look ahead a smidge and see at the questions that we might think about while we're reading. Okay, first one, who are these poems about? We might even decide like who they are about. I think they're going to be about some people in her life. But you might also think with the word, what are these poems about? Before we get any deeper, right? Just what's going on? Number two, what's the big idea? Donald Duck over here used to say that, I think, and I'm not going to try that voice. I was practicing a little bit, but if you want to try your Donald Duck voice, ask each other, what's the big idea, right? So what details helped you guess the big idea as I'm reading these poems? Okay, just like we did with the picture. And then wonder about this. What is the poet suggesting about life or the human experience? Right, which is really fun to start talking about with young people, because the older you get, the more you really see and know about what that word human experience really means, right? It's fun to discuss. Okay, and then we're going to make a prediction. What theme will we hear more about as the book goes on? And then really what makes you guess that? Because now you're starting to be an active reader and participate in the unfolding story, right? And the narrative that's starting to happen as we read this text together. Okay, and then after we're done, we're going to apply what we're talking about here, maybe to another book you can find yourself, right? So find a book you like, read on it for a bit, and then stop and jot a prediction about the theme. Talk to your friend, ask them what they're reading. Try this together at home. And then as you continue to read, if that was the prediction you made, see if when you read on, it confirms your hypothesis about what this big idea really is. Okay, so I'm going to pull us back to question 1, and let's just center on that one while we talk about first poem called The Routine. The routine is the same every school year. I go straight home after school, and since mommy says that I'm la niña de la casa, it's my job to help her out around the house. So after school, I eat an apple, my favorite snack, wash dishes, and sweep. Dust around mommy's altar to la Virgin Maria, to avoid papi's TV if he's home, because he hates when I clean in front of it while he's trying to watch La Noticias or a Red Sox game. It's one of the few things Twin and I argue about, how he never has to do half the cleaning I do, but is still better liked by mommy. He helps me when he's home, folds the laundry, or scrubs the tub, but he won't get in trouble if he doesn't. I hear one of mommy's famous sayings in my ear, Mira muchacha, life ain't fair. That's why we have to earn our entrance into heaven. Okay, it's fun to read these poems with you in the morning. Those last lines, they're impossible to ignore for me because I'm a definite poetry lover. Okay, so that was called The Routine. What was that about? Stop for a minute and just kind of think about it. You got the title to start with as a way to make some guesses, right? But what is the routine? And what is her routine like, right? And then what's the big idea associated with why she would tell us about her routine, right? That would take some explaining. So what's really neat is a theme really isn't a word. A theme is something you can explain with a sentence or two, and then with some details of how you came to that conclusion. Okay, let's try it again. And this one's called Altar Boy. Twin is easier for mommy to understand. He likes church, as much of a science geek as he is. He doesn't question the Bible the way that I do. He's been an altar boy since he was 8. Could quote the New Testament in Spanish and English since he was 10. Leads discussions at Bible study even better than the priest. No disrespect to Father Sean. He even volunteered at the Bible camp this summer. And now that school started, he'll miss the stations of cross dioramas his campers make from popsicle sticks, the stick figure drawings of Mary in the manger, the mosaic made of marbles that he hung in the window of our room. The one that I threw out this afternoon while I was cleaning watched it fall between the fire escape grates. For a second, it caught the sun in 100 colors until it smashed against the street. I'll apologize to Twin later, say it was an accident. He'll forgive me. He'll pretend to believe me. Pretty interesting, right? So she's getting into some topics that may be very personal, and it seems like that might be one of the themes to talk about her experience and her relationship with, it sounds like, religion and the way that that is part of her family, right? So again, a really interesting theme that sometimes we may not bring into school much for good reason, but it's also something you can explore by reading a book a little bit about a character that an author is developing, right? Who needs somewhere to talk about some of these things also. Okay, so what details might have helped you guess a big idea in either of the two poems we just said, right? Let's really focus on that one in this poem. It's called More About Twin. Although Twin is older by almost an hour, of course the birth got complicated when it was my turn, he doesn't act older. He is years softer than I will ever be. When we were little, I would come home with bleeding knuckles, and Mommy would gasp and shake me, "Muchacha, siempre peleando. Why can't you be a lady? Or like your brother? He never fights. This is not God's way." And Twin's eyes would meet mine across the room. I never told her he didn't fight because my hands became fists for him. My hands learned how to bleed when other kids tried to make him into a wound. My brother was birthed a soft whistle, quiet, barely stirring the air, a gentle sound. But I was born all the hurricane he needed to lift and drop those that hurt him to the ground. Wow. All right. So there's some really neat details in there. Some things about perhaps her relationship and where her feelings about her identity come from as she is a twin, how they are much different, and then how that helps us really understand thematically the big idea that maybe the author is talking about just in this one poem. And perhaps it could be about how she is there for him and knows her place in this world as it relates to his place in this world. And it doesn't seem like she wants him to have to be the knuckle person, right? With the bleeding knuckles. It seems like she's excited to maybe realize her own identity as it relates to her twin and provide that part when they need it. Okay, so let's keep thinking. We've got really, I think, this final poem. In this poem, interesting enough, we're up to the date in the book that says Tuesday, September 11th. So historically, the poet would know that date very significantly herself. And it's called It's Only the First Week of 10th Grade. Okay, let's explore the next question through this poem. What is the poet suggesting about life or the human experience? And in this case, it might be life in school, right? It's only the first week of 10th grade, and high school is already a mess. In 9th grade, you're in between. No longer in junior high, but still treated like a kid. In 9th grade, you're always frozen between trying not to smile or cry until you learn that no one cares about what your face does, only what your hands will do. I thought 10th grade would be different, but I still feel like a lone shrimp in a stream where too many are searching for someone with a soft shell to peel apart and crush. Today, I already had to curse a guy out for pulling on my bra strap, and then shoved a senior into a locker for trying to whisper into my ear. We know what girls like you want, they say, and I'm disgusted at myself, the slight excitement that shivers up my back. At the same time, I wish I could fold into the tiniest corner for me to hide in. Okay, again, this book is something about an 8th or 9th grade level and intended in that way, and you can see how it's giving such topics a chance to probably find their way into conversations between students. So as far as social emotional learning goes, instead of hiding some of these conversations, we really are working on incorporating those into our day-to-day discussions and our life inside of school, as long as students feel that they are comfortable and have some maturity as they apply to these topics. So please know that that's why this is probably such a powerful book right now, and why it's winning such high acclaim from so many people, is that we know we all need to talk about these topics and learn about them in our youth, so we're best prepared to know who we are and where we stand on so many different issues. And there's so many ways that we can explore that, and one way might be just in our own private reading of a book. So what do you think that last poem, talking about the challenges of being in, I guess, the second week? Is that what she said? Or the first week of school? And I think the title tells us it's only the first week of 10th grade, right? So just that alone, what does that suggest? Is that already there's been so much to deal with, and just coming back to experiencing what it means to be back really takes on a whole new job for this character as she pursues her decisions about what it's going to be like this year. Certainly the way she's being pestered and bothered by people, and her reactions to that, and what it means to kind of make those decisions, and who she might turn to for advice as she's growing up. So these kind of books about growing up are a great thing to read long after you yourself have grown up, because it helps you remember that there's a lot of questions out there going around that everyone needs some time and chance to perhaps discuss with a peer, or and sometimes even an adult. Okay, so the fourth question: what theme do you think we'll hear more about as the book goes on? What have you heard about that you figure will likely come back up as we read more? And I have a guess that a lot of it will be about identity. I have some feelings that it'll have some thoughts about her family and her relationship with her twin, right? And certainly then her own relationship, which makes us really think about how much students don't talk about that, with spirituality and some form of religion that doesn't necessarily need for us to discuss it in specific, but for her to see that that is a part of what she does and part of her life. It seems like this is also going to give a discussion as a chance for not everyone in her family is going to see this topic in the same way. So very interesting, and we're not very far into the book, really only on page 46, and there's a whole world that is already starting to be revealed. So I hope that has helped you think a little bit, and when you're looking for a book, go ahead and jot a prediction about what you think the theme is. And then as you continue to read, maybe you find some additional ones. And if you read something together with a friend, it's a really good thing to talk about along the way. Okay, I'm Chris Odom. This has been another segment of ELA Tuesday on the KCPS Homeroom. We've been talking about theme today and the great work of Elizabeth Acevedo in a book called The Poet X. Thanks again. Have a great day.